Hello and welcome to The Download from Wise Woman and Wordsmith, where insight meets inspiration. A space for creatives, dreamers and visionaries ready to spark new ideas, ignite purpose and reimagine possibilities. Here we share downloads of wisdom, stories and strategies to help you thrive in your creative journey. I'm your host, Jill Marshall. Tune in, connect and let the magic unfold.
Show you tomorrow.
Welcome back to The Download. This is episode 29, and while it's not quite the milestone of 30, it holds its own magic, because 29 is the space just before transformation. It's the final step in a cycle, the liminal moment before something shifts. So in this episode, I want to ask, what if all the weirdness, those gut pulls, chance encounters, dream images, déjà vu moments, what if they're not random at all? What if they're part of a pattern? A pattern with intelligence. A pattern that's trying to speak to you. What is a pattern, really? At the simplest level, a pattern is something that repeats, something we can track or predict or map. But on a deeper level, pattern is the way the universe speaks. In science, we see patterns in everything from atomic structure to galactic spirals. In mathematics, fractals repeat at every scale, from the branching of blood vessels to the coastline of continents. In music, we find rhythm, intervals, repetition, notes returning like memories. In myth, particularly the hero's journey, we meet the same characters over and over, the orphan, the mentor, the shadow, the fool. And in our lives, we loop through love, fear, ambition, doubt, expansion. We meet the same lessons dressed in different clothes. So how do we address these patterns? As Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. I'd go one step further. Once you do make it conscious, you start to see the structure of something deeper guiding your path. A pattern, a frequency, a way of living the downloads, not just receiving them. Patterns are not magic. Actually, they're mathematics, physics. Some call it sacred geometry, but the facts are we live in a patterned universe. Just look at nature, the Fibonacci spiral in sunflowers, galaxies and hurricanes. Music follows patterns of rhythm and resonance. DNA encodes us with a biological pattern. Even chaos theory shows that unpredictability, when examined closely enough, forms fractals, self-repeating structures in infinite variation. Artists and scientists alike speak of this pattern recognition. Albert Einstein called the intuitive mind a sacred gift and said logic alone wouldn't uncover truth. Virginia Woolf wrote about moments of being, flashes where the pattern beneath life revealed itself. Nikola Tesla claimed he received his best ideas in sudden downloads, like flashes of pattern appearing fully formed in his mind. And more recently, we've seen people like Rick Rubin, the music producer, the media powerhouse, speak openly about following a feeling or something unseen, or as Oprah called it, the whisper that guides their decisions. So today, we're going to explore how these moments of pattern, these synchronicities, archetypal loops, gut hits and time slips might actually be invitations. A sat-nav reading or good old-fashioned map to a bigger destination. It's my firm belief that it's now time to start thinking about intuition as intelligence. An unseen frequency guiding not just spiritual lives, but creativity, business, leadership. In her new book, The Prism, Laura Day calls this structured inner work, and it's grounded intuition that Fortune 500 CEOs, hedge fund strategists, and Hollywood stars rely on. When I first started this podcast, I was doing what many of us do in the early intuitive stages. I was receiving things, downloads, dreams, nudges, images. A phrase would drop in while I was in the shower or walking in the woods. A client would mention something that echoed something I'd dreamt the night before. A book would fall off a shelf, literally. I knew enough about this world to accept that some of these downloads are just subconscious programming of something factual. A very recent instance of this, someone from the past turned up in my dream and berated me for forgetting their birthday. I was about to go into some deep pondering of what this might mean when I noticed the date. The day before had actually been their birthday. Hadn't seen them for 30 years, but my brain obviously registered this fact, and my subconscious let me know about it while I was asleep. Wild. But there were other nudges and downloads that did resonate as something other. So I started recording. Not just episodes, but patterns. And something strange, or maybe beautiful, happened. The podcast stopped being just a container for my downloads. It became a mirror of the way I live. And when I zoom out now, with 28 episodes behind me, I can see the pattern in the pattern, a spiral, one that keeps circling back to the same themes, but each time at a deeper level of embodiment. And so, in the spirit of today's theme, I want to share the shape of that spiral with you, not because I think my story is special, but because it might mirror something in your own, if it helps you to visualize it. Think of it like the Koru symbol we all know in NZ. It's the shape of a spiral, loop or coil and resembles an unfurling silver fern sprout. First, we're at phase 1, the spark, where intuition is the seed. In the early episodes, everything was raw, electric, unexpected. I spoke about synchronicities, dream wisdom, spontaneous awakenings, crazy coincidences, signals to new directions. I wasn't curating a brand. I wasn't building a platform. I was just letting the weirdness lead, following the signal and sharing as I went. And that's important because this was the seed stage of the spiral, the part where we follow the thread without knowing why. I was integrating in real time, living questions rather than delivering answers. And the audience who showed up weren't just passive listeners. They were pattern seekers too. People who knew what it meant to follow the shimmer, even when it made no logical sense. That phase taught me something essential. You don't have to understand the pattern to trust it. Sometimes your job is just to notice what keeps returning. Next, phase 2, archetypes and language, where the meaning begins to map. This was when something started to shift. The downloads kept coming, but they began to land differently. I wasn't just receiving insight. I was starting to categorize it, frame it and name it, if you like. Archetypes appeared. The magician, the invisible orphan, the alchemist. Jungian theory filtered in as I began talking more about the shadow, the anima, the collective unconscious. And I started using story as a container, both ancient myth and contemporary narrative, to make sense of the signals. This was a powerful turn in the spiral, because once we begin to language our intuition, it becomes something we can share. It's no longer just a private knowing, it's a bridge. And this is where I began to notice something. The more clearly I spoke my own symbolic language, the more resonance I created with others. People heard their patterns reflected in mine, and I began to see how this work could translate into other areas. Fiction editing, mentorship, messaging strategy, architecture for an alternative to the hero's journey. I started getting reactions from people that this helped their understanding too. In other words, the pattern began to organise my vocation, not the other way round. The emerging pattern showed me the way. And then on to phase 3, and this sounds very hero's journey, or even Star Wars, classic examples of the hero's journey, by the way, which George Lucas will attest to. In this, I wasn't a Skywalker, I was becoming the Edgewalker, bridging the inner and outer worlds. This next turn of the spiral was subtle, but it was everything. I started to see that the insights I was speaking about on the download weren't just spiritual or creative, they were strategic. The same intuitive nudges that helped me make decisions in my personal life were now guiding how I designed offers, mentored editors and corporate leaders, structured courses and content, and advised clients in business. That's when things started getting really interesting. I stopped seeing mysticism and logic as opposites. I stopped putting intuitive on one side and commercial on the other. Instead, I have fully embraced the fact that I'm an edgewalker, someone who blends the mystical with the practical, the symbolic with the structured. I've been helping others do the same. Creators, consultants, founders, people who sensed there was more but haven't known before how to trust the deeper signal. And it was in this phase that I started to attract a different kind of listener too. People from business, from tech, from innovation spaces. People who'd maybe read Laura Day's The Prism, or who see intuition not as fluff, but as intel, a kind of second sight or sixth sense for navigating complex systems. And without realising it, the download had become not just a podcast, but a frequency. One that helped me build new offers and ideas, some still in formation, and others already in development as my alter ego, wise woman and wordsmith, unapologetically straddling business and the esoteric masculine and feminine styles, the deeply data-driven and the wildly creative. And now? Now I find myself in a different space. Phase 4, integration, with all the threads converging. It's not that the synchronicities have stopped, or that the dreams have faded. It's that they have roots. The spiral has spiraled in far enough that I can see the shape of it from the inside. I'm inside the Fibonacci spiral, looking out. It's not theory. It's practice. It's integration. Creative voice, spiritual depth, strategic clarity. These aren't separate lanes. They're part of the same spiral map. And when I look at what's ahead, episode 30 and beyond, I can feel the next edge forming. New invitations, new ways to guide and serve, new ways to live the download, not just receive it. So let's zoom back out. Where do we see pattern? Everywhere. In science, in the spirals of galaxies and the clustering of neurons. In art, in the repeated motifs of artists like Klimt. In the symbolic language of Hilma of Klint. In the musical themes of a symphony's final movement. In nature, in the mycelium beneath the forest, in the migration of birds, in the cellular rhythm of birth and decay. In story, in the hero's journey, in the repetition of fables across cultures, in the fact that we still tell tales of transformation over and over again. And in you, in your relationships, in your dreams, in your work, in the thing that just won't leave you alone, the thing that keeps circling back. That's the pattern, that's the download, and that's the next doorway. Which means that's where we are, dear listener, at the cusp, the edge of the spiral. This podcast is evolving, and so am I. Episode 30 will bring a new shape, a new form, perhaps a new container for deeper work. But for now, I want to thank you. Whether you've listened once or every week since the beginning, you are part of this pattern too. Until next time, trust the pattern. It's already guiding you home.
Thanks for tuning in to the Download podcast. Feel free to like, comment and share and all of that good stuff. And for more about my books, coaching or business services, please check out wisewomanandwordsmith.com. Also, I'd love to hear more about your own intuitive hits and downloads. So do find us on Facebook, YouTube and more.